Well, hi there, lovely listeners and voluptuous viewers. You are here down the red rabbit hole once again. We've missed you, but we do have a massive treat for you. I am author NV Peacock, as you know, also known as Nikki. And of course, there's Lisa Shepherd with me, comedian and therapist.
Hello. I'm here.
But we have also dragged another author down with us, the lovely Philippa East. Philippa, hey,
Hello. How did I get down here?
I don't know. Lisa?
I've introduced the use of chloroform. I think it
Oh,
works
no.
well.
What does it smell like, Philippa? I've always wondered.
Muddy,
Ooh,
but in a comforting way.
what, the chloroform?
Oh, I thought you meant the burrow.
No. I was like, what does chloroform smell like? Because you'd be out, wouldn't you, the minute it
Yeah, I guess you probably,
I don't think it
would have a
smells
good whiff
anything.
of it.
You think?
I don't know.
Yeah,
Maybe
you
it's
get
good that we
one
don't
good
know,
whiff.
though.
And then you'd be down, wouldn't you?
Well, you should know, Lisa.
Well,
you're
according to the
wielding it.
movies, though, do you know what? I mean, I'm basing that entirely on having seen movies where if they're going to use it, it's like for a couple of seconds and then they're gone, aren't they? But this may be one of these movie things where in reality, it takes 20 minutes or something.
Maybe.
I
But
don't know.
They used to use it in operations, didn't they? They'd have like a mask over the person's face and put a drop of chloroform to keep them under.
Mhm.
Yeah. I think it's probably fairly quick acting, but I reckon you would still get a good mouthful of the smell before you went under. I imagine
Chemical.
that's probably your last memory. We could Google it. What does chloroform smell like?
I feel like that would get the police involved. Then take one
That's
look
the
at your
problem with
history.
being a writer,
Mind our
isn't it?
searches. Yeah. Don't look through my search history, thank you.
So, Philippa, tell us why you're down the hole. What have you written that's caught our attention?
Well, I have written 4 psychological thrillers. They are Little White Lies, Safe and Sound, I'll Never Tell, and A Guilty Secret. They all have 3-word titles, as classic psychological thrillers do. And I think the plan is for us to talk about 2 of them today, which have kind of inspirations that come from real life stories involving crime or something that looks very much like a crime of some kind. Yeah.
So you went down a lot of research rabbit holes.
I did. Well, part of what I call research is like watching Netflix documentaries
That's the
and
same as
true
us.
crime
Yeah,
programs. Does
same.
that count? Like I sit in my little burrow and I fall into the telly. But I mean, on a more serious note, there are some really, really good, TV documentaries these days, which often are really well researched and really kind of give me a lot of food for thought, really, I think. Yeah.
So what's the case and what's the book that we're going to talk about first?
Yes, so the first one that we're going to talk about is Safe and Sound, which is this one. This is actually a proof copy, so it's obviously got a slightly different cover. If you can see, if I hold it up closely, you'll maybe work out that what this is actually an insect wing on the front. And shall I read the blurb for you?
Yeah, let's have a bit of blurb.
In a small London bedsit, a radio is playing. A small dining table is set for 3, and curled up on the sofa is a body. Jen, the housing manager, is the one who discovers the woman, along with the bailiffs. All indications suggest that the tenant, Sarah Jones, was pretty, charismatic, and full of life. So how is it possible that her body has lain undiscovered for 10 whole months? So this book was inspired for me by a docudrama that I watched probably around 2013, and I would recommend this film to anyone, really. It's beautifully done, beautifully made. It's by filmmaker Carol Morley, and it's called Dreams of a Life, and it stars Zoe Ashton, I think her name is. Let me double check. Hang on, I don't want to get that wrong. Yes, Zoe Ashton. And again, it's done partly as a dramatization, but also as a documentary, and it's based on the story of a woman in her 30s, her late 30s, called Joyce Carol Vincent, who was found, or whose remains were found in her South London flat about 2.5 years after she had died. And the filmmaker, Carol Morley, heard about this in the local news or read about it in the local paper and took it upon herself to track down the old friends and associates of Joyce Carol Vincent. And she put adverts again in local papers. I think she put like a paid to have one on the side of a taxi cab and things like that, basically saying, did you know this woman, Joyce Carol Vincent, born wherever, some basic details. And when the filmmaker made contact with these various friends and associates, a lot of them had read about the story of the dead woman in the paper and had not connected it to their friend that they had fallen out of touch with. And so the docudrama Dreams of a Life is interviews with the people that knew Joyce, describing how they remembered her as this very vibrant, charismatic, beautiful, charming woman, and trying to piece together how it led to her completely falling off the radar. And that film, after I watched it, it absolutely haunted me. And I ended up just having to write a whole book about it. That's basically what happened. Yeah. So that's the story behind the story for me.
And she was undiscovered for how long?
About just over 2 years. I think she had died. I think they figured out that she died.
Well, they guessed it was December, I think,
Yeah.
Yeah, because she had
20,
Christmas presents or something around her.
2003, because she was surrounded by the Christmas presents she'd supposedly been wrapping at some point very close to the time of her death. But they don't know exactly how long because they could only estimate by that. Her remains were.
I think they looked at things like the best before dates of food in her fridge and things like that. So they could, if a pint of milk had a best before of January the 2nd, 2003 or something, or 2004, they could kind of calculate that it must have been within a matter of weeks of that.
That was pretty quick thinking to check the fridge. I wouldn't have thought of that. I'd have been like, how did this happen?
Or I suppose you could look at the mail. You could look at the last piece of mail, the stamped when it's come through the door that it's been picked up, but they don't have a precise date. They just have the month. They never got as close because her remains were so decomposed that there were basically skeletal remains. There was nothing else left.
Yeah.
Which is just, I remember hearing it. I remember hearing about this case at the time and thinking just in my head, it was an older person who had just fallen asleep peacefully watching the telly, and maybe, their relatives or people in their lives had already passed, so there was nobody kind of looking or coming. When I found out she was 38, I went, oh gosh. And she was this young, beautiful, vibrant woman, but you just didn't associate that kind of thing happening to someone like this. You think people would come looking. She had 4 sisters.
Yeah.
She was one of five girls. I think she had quite a difficult childhood. Her mum died when she was 11, and I think from what they implied in the documentary, her dad was quite absent, wasn't he? He was kind of there, but he was off doing his own thing. He wasn't always as sort of focused in, probably raised by her sisters. And I think her sisters said that they had tried to contact her at her previous address. They had an address for her. So they'd sent a couple of cards and they'd sent stuff there to try and track her down, but she'd never given any forwarding address. So they had
Yep.
no idea that she was in this bedsit in Wood Green above like the shopping precinct as well. It was like all underneath was bustling shops and things.
Yeah.
And she was up there for 2 years, telly blaring, and nobody came looking. Nobody thought to check.
Yeah. Yeah. Really,
Yeah.
really tragic. And I think, yeah, I think she's from what I gathered from the film, she was one of those people who presented on the surface as very sociable, very, uh, you know, lots of friends around her, life and soul of the party, always beautifully turned out, very glamorous,
Mm.
but underneath clearly quite broken, quite damaged, not ever really able to connect with people or let them get very close. And yes, constantly kind of moving around a very, very kind of peripatetic lifestyle,
Bit of a
going from one job.
butterfly.
Yeah,
Yeah, kind of from one place to the next.
yeah.
Yeah,
And
having networks of people.
I thought a lot when I was writing this book about we probably all have that friend, and I know I do, that we met at some stage of our life, we were close with, and then we've sort of fallen out of touch a little bit, and we haven't maybe seen them for a while, or we haven't emailed them or whatever. But we kind of assume that they're getting on with their own life with their new group of friends somewhere,
Mhm.
whether those are work colleagues or friends from where they live now. And it doesn't matter that I haven't been in touch with them recently, because of course someone will have. And why would it be me? I'm not that close anymore. But what if everybody has become like me, just not that close anymore? And there isn't this replacement group of friends or work colleagues or partner or something like that. And I think that's what happened with Joyce and her friends, that they all assumed she'd kind of social butterflied her way into some other group of friends or gone to some more glamorous party somewhere. But she hadn't. She'd fallen through the cracks, and she probably
Mm.
had been very ashamed as well to tell anyone that she was out of work, or that she didn't have, a proper place to live. She didn't reach out to anyone because her image was of this glamorous, successful, you know, woman.
Well, I think, yeah, going on that, the note about her being ashamed, she was housed in that bed sit because she'd been a victim of domestic abuse.
Mm.
So she'd been housed there by a charity, and I think they were half paying her rent, or the housing association were half paying her rent, which was kind of how it again just rolled on. Nobody checked monthly because half of it was paid and the other half was just building up in arrears, which was why nobody was coming to look until the bailiffs did come to look. But there was suggestion in the documentary that there was this sort of case of domestic abuse, and part of me wondered watching it, was this something that was omnipresent for her? Was this something that there was a relationship towards the end of her life that was an abusive relationship that was incredibly difficult, or was the abuse from other people in her life and it went on? Was there always kind of somebody in the shadows that, because I don't think the boyfriend, what's the name of the boyfriend who speaks in the documentary?
Was it Martin?
Yes, that's it, Martin. I don't think she ever like lived with Martin, did she? It was always kind of flighty. Like she lived with him at times, like stayed on his sofa. He always seemed to be someone who she'd come to for help, but she never like lived with him full time. There was always this part of herself that she was keeping a bit hidden away from that particular relationship. So it just makes me wonder if if this domestic abuse angle needs a little bit more examining, really, because that person must know who they are,
Yeah,
who
true. Good
was
point.
involved with that. They've never that they weren't featured in the documentary or named at any point as to who that was or how she ended up having to seek that refuge. Do you know the bit that stood out to me that was so sad was that she had that peptic ulcer and she'd gone for the treatment towards the end of her life. She'd been in hospital for treatment, and when they'd asked for a next of kin on her form, she'd put her bank manager.
Oh
Yeah.
no.
Yeah, isn't that so sad? Like that was the
Yeah.
person that she chose, that she was thinking about as her next. And I was thinking, you could put Martin. I don't think
Yeah,
Martin would mind. He seems really nice.
Yeah, but
yeah.
do we only have his side of things? That's
Mm,
because without her, we don't have her side of anything.
Well,
mm,
we have the stories of their other friends who
Mm.
would say like they would like the other friends would say Martin is the nicest, softest guy, you know. So yeah, it's a good
yeah.
question, isn't it? Was there something you always, especially as kind of thriller writers, we watch these things with always like a suspicion in our minds, don't
Oh
we?
yeah.
That
I mean, the
yeah,
psychology angle is very interesting in terms of, if she'd been abused or suffered quite a lot of kind of, you know, being ostracized, I guess, from her family as well, she might not want to form those deep connections with people anymore. She might be avoidant
Mm.
and be,
exactly.
and that is kind of what killed her perhaps in the end, because maybe if someone had been with her, she'd have got help and wouldn't have
Yeah.
died.
Mm.
I thought a lot about the idea of this disconnect between the image that we might present to the world and the reality of what's going on. And obviously, this story happening back in the early 2000s, things like social media were not really
Mm.
around, definitely not in the way that they are now. And again, I think it's something that we're potentially all more vulnerable to now of, because we hear stories about this all the time, don't we? You look at someone's Instagram feed and it's the life looks perfect and then you discover underneath that there's something awful going on. There's the story about Gabby Petito who
Mm.
went camper vanning round the kind of wilds of America with her boyfriend, and they were doing like an Instagram sort of
Yeah.
diary, and
Van
it was
life.
quite
Mm.
van life. Yeah, it was
Mm.
all quite novel at the time, and they were these two, gorgeous young things in love and, having adventures in the outback. And yeah, clearly again there was very serious domestic violence and ended up with one of them dead. And again, it's that thing of the shame, I guess, that I think that Joyce was probably someone who carried a huge amount of shame and presented this overcompensatory image to the world of being so lovely and so glamorous. But
Mm.
when things were going wrong in her life, she hid it and she hid it and she hid it. And it wouldn't surprise me if she had maybe ended up in such a vulnerable situation that she was relying on someone who was abusive to her because she had nowhere else to go. And I mean, we don't know. We probably will never know, but that real sadness of yeah, I think my take home message was just like check on your friends, man. Don't assume that they're okay and don't assume that someone else is checking in with them.
Yeah.
Um,
And I mean that talking about kind of what she was presenting to the world and maybe what she was ashamed of, that she had no GCSE, she had no qualifications. I don't think it was O levels at the time, wouldn't it? But she had none. She left school at 16 with absolutely nothing. She didn't even get, I don't think she even got one, they were saying, but she'd had elocution lessons as a child. So I think there was this message of presenting a certain front. And then she did really well. She got a job, didn't she work for the government in finances or something? Like she wasn't penny pinching. She was dealing with big amounts of money and was very good at her job and got promoted and would always go to these other jobs and be popular within the office and liked and had leaving parties and when she moved on from things, but never really quite gave a reason for why she was moving on or where she was going to. But maybe it does feel like, is there somebody you're running from? Is there something you're running from? Is it somebody or is it something internal for you? Are you
Mm.
are you
Mm.
trying to outrun that childhood? Are you trying to outrun that shame? Are you trying to outrun a father who wasn't interested or a mother who couldn't be there for you, who was wonderful, but then, passed away and couldn't be there anymore? But
or
yeah.
or that thing of because forming really strong connections is about
Mm.
being really well known, isn't it? Kind of really getting to know people and sharing your history with them, your hopes, your fears, your dreams. And the longer you stay in one place, the more people expect to get to know you at that level. And I wonder if what was quite problematic for her is she was very good at, getting in with a group, but once she'd been there for a while, perhaps in a particular job or whatever, people would want to get to know her. And she didn't want people to get to know her skeletons in the closet, whatever they would be, whatever perhaps traumas or difficulties she had. And how do you escape that? You move on, you leave the job, you move to the next one. And again, life becomes quite chaotic and quite temporary. Everything becomes quite temporary, and you're never really getting settled and yeah, then things can easily just then fall off a bit of a cliff, I think.
There
Yeah.
perhaps was a big dollop of kind of imposter syndrome. Because if she didn't have much in the way of qualifications and she suddenly gets this amazing job, she'd probably thinking, I don't deserve this. They're going to find me out soon that I'm not who I'm pretending to be. And the problem with imposter syndrome is the more successful you get, the worse it gets.
Yeah.
Because your brain wants to kind of agree with itself, so to speak. It wants to be like, well, I was right. Because it takes less calories and energy for it to be right than it does to question itself. So I can
I'm
imagine
still
how
waiting to be
uncomfortable.
marched out of the rabbit hole, to be fair. Like any minute, my imposter syndrome's going all over. Though I'm in a deep, dark hole, I don't deserve to be here.
Nobody deserves to be in the deep black hole. But it could be that, or like you were
Yeah.
saying, Philippa, it could be just like vulnerability, because it takes a lot. People, there are certain people out there that are just used to being vulnerable, that don't mind talking about anything and everything under the sun. But then there are other, which I guess are all the extroverts, but all the introverts are more like, I don't want to be vulnerable. I don't want you to know what my deepest, darkest thoughts are. I don't want you to know what happened to me. And so, like you said, it could be just that she's moving on, because once you get to that point, you have to leave, because it's either that or be vulnerable.
Yeah, exactly.
So
Yeah.
here's a question, Philippa, having watched the documentary or the docudrama. Did you think that, what did you think of some of the comments of Martin's friends when they were describing Joyce with her petite little ankles and her lovely feet and her that she was petite and lovely and she wore these little dresses? Like, I thought, is that a sign of the times of when the documentary was made? Or is there something about Joyce that she was sexualized? Because later on they also talk about she was always kind of fending men off in a way. There were, she was almost too desirable. And Martin, and I am team Martin actually. I thought he was genuinely a nice guy. Genuinely a nice guy. He's not Brad Pitt. All right. He's not
Brad
he's
Pitt's not
lovely,
Brad Pitt anymore.
but he's not, yeah. All right. Well, it's the current really attractive one that everyone's fancying at the moment. I'm a bit out of the times. I'm still on Brad Pitt and George Clooney, so I think I'm a bit out of the times. But he wasn't the most physically attractive man in the world. And if you've seen pictures of Joyce, and maybe we'll put some up when we put this episode out, she's beautiful. She was absolutely stunning. And we've talked about having a certain level of kind of magnitude, like magnetism, sorry, not magnitude, maybe a magnitudinal magnetism.
Magnetism.
But she had something about her that people were attracted to. People wanted to spend time with her. She sounds like, the way that people describe it, she had a great energy.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting. Again, it's so much speculation, and I don't want to, stretch things beyond it, what evidence we have or what information we have. But it makes me think a little bit about certain personality disorders as mental health conditions, and specifically the personality disorder that we used to call borderline personality disorder or emotionally unstable personality disorder, which is very, very, very often linked with a history of abuse, commonly sexual abuse, and has huge impacts on people's ability to navigate interpersonal relationships. And people with borderline personality disorder often have a real what we often call like an approach avoid dilemma. They are desperate for love and connection and validation and safety. So they want to approach relationships and form that connection. But they are also absolutely terrified of being hurt and abused by anyone that they get close to because of their trauma history. So at the same time, they will be pushed to avoid those relationships. So that could create a lot of chaos and a lot of connecting but not connecting, or connecting and then running. And one of the features that some people with this personality type have is a very what's the word? Very, that their charisma can often have a very alluring sexual element to it. They can be very sexually alluring and sort of charming. A good example is in the film, oh gosh, what is it called? The one with Glenn Close, the thriller with Glenn Close and
Fatal
Michael
Attraction.
Douglas.
Fatal
Fatal
Attraction.
Attraction. Glenn Close's character, now she is someone who has classic borderline personality disorder, fear of abandonment and this kind of thing. But when we first meet her, she is incredibly sexually alluring. You know, she bumps into Michael Douglas on the street and he is smitten. And they got, you know, they off they go to the hotel room. And so I wonder whether Joyce had a bit of that energy, that frisson of sexuality that would show up. And yes, I think it would make sense that Martin, as someone who is a teddy bear rather than a rawr, you know, hot-blooded
Tiger.
male, and I think that there was a sense that their relationship was actually very platonic. Really, I don't know if they ever actually had a sexual relationship, even though Martin sometimes used the word boyfriend, and it was it had the sense that she treated him more like a big brother, and whether he felt very safe to her because ironically he wasn't going to pounce on her like that. You know, does that make any sense? Is that weird? Does that make sense?
No, I think
There's
that makes perfect sense.
There's a brilliant book about BPD called I Love You, I Hate You, Don't Leave Me.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
it just sums it up, doesn't it?
That's it.
Absolutely perfectly. The title
Yeah.
itself just sums it up.
Yeah. And I think you could probably get a little bit underneath by saying, I love you, I'm terrified of you, don't leave me.
Yeah.
The hate often comes from a place of terror. But yes, it often displays as anger. I mean, she didn't seem as someone who expressed it through anger, but she maybe expressed it through running away.
Yeah. And there was it fits a little bit with these that's not all of the accounts matched up. That's the other thing that struck me in the documentary. So they all said, oh, she had a beautiful singing voice from when she was a child. She had a beautiful singing voice. They compared her singing voice to Whitney Houston. And then somebody else turned around, well, she couldn't sing for Toffee. She could mime all right, but she couldn't sing. And I was like, hang on, someone just said she could sing and someone said she couldn't. So I wonder if it was again maybe about presenting different parts of herself to different people. And it was probably about the connection with them. And what side, maybe when you can sing powerfully, maybe there's a vulnerability in singing beautifully, and she couldn't show that to some people, or it's about what kind of response you give to her. Do you sort of be in awe, or do you think, oh, I'll help you get better at that, or you need me, or how you view her?
Maybe it's a bit of, I was going to say, maybe it's a bit of a chameleon thing as well. To some people she was one thing, and to some people she was completely different. Because, I'm guessing people with BDP tend to adapt to whoever they're with through necessity of perhaps their previous abuse or anything along those lines. And and so one person would know them as perhaps extroverted, life of the party, and another would know them, oh, they're good to cuddle on the couch with. And
I think maybe people saw in her what they wanted to see, or what like I can imagine that if your impression of her was that she's this beautiful, alluring, star stage performer who has this huge presence, when she gets in front of a microphone you're going to just add in, oh, and she's got this, because she's given it all this, and you're just going to be like, yeah, and she's an amazing singer as well. Whereas perhaps if you just were kind of seeing her through a more objective lens, or you were a bit less kind of rose tinted with her, you'd maybe be friends with her a while, you'd seen a few of her warts, you'd probably think, yeah, she was a bit rough on those tracks. But actually it's interesting because I think they did have some recordings of her singing, and it's kind of ambiguous in a way because she's singing very high and in a very breathy voice, a bit like is
Marilyn
it Donna's
Monroe,
or
is
Donna
it?
Summer,
Yeah.
that kind of floaty. And it could have gone either way, it could have been like, oh, it's like this beautiful ethereal voice, or it could be like she can't actually really sing. She's just But if you actually got her to like belt out a Whitney Houston song, it would be a mess.
Well, there is now a concept album that somebody made. Hang on, I'm going to find the name. I had a little listen to it yesterday. There's actually quite a good track on there. So Steve Wilson made a concept album called Hand Cannot Erase, and this was released in 2014. It was his fourth album, and he based it on the life of Joyce Carol
I
Vincent.
heard about that.
Yeah, I put it on last night and had a little listen to a couple of tracks. It's not really my thing, but there were parts of it that I thought, well, this would have made a lovely kind of soundtrack for a documentary actually to play alongside. And then also another song was written. So some after researching Vincent's story, the Alkaline Trio's song, they released a song called Miss Vincent. I think they changed it to they changed the title to No One Knew in the end, but it was originally called Miss Vincent because it was about Joyce. So I kind of, it's really sad. It's so sad what happened to her. And you do think, how can somebody for 2 years remain there and nobody files a missing persons? If the bailiffs hadn't gone in, how much longer
Yeah.
would she have been there? But I also feel that there's something about the case that did kind of capture the imaginations of people and create, works of art like psychological thrillers and concept albums and songs and
Yeah.
I do actually have another case of somebody who wasn't found
Oh,
even longer.
oh, hold that thought there.
But
Hold
there was a
it.
time there was definitely a moment there I was going, have I got my timing right? Have I got my
No,
time? I think I have. I think no.
no, because talking of missing people, we have to have enough time for Philippa to write those emails to her loved ones to say that she's safe while she's
Oh,
down the
okay.
rabbit hole for the week,
Yeah.
or to at least claim she's safe. Yes, because we are
They're
going to
making
keep
me
you,
say
Philippa. Yes, no code words. We'll pick them up. So, for future reference, my code word if I'm in danger is pineapple moonbeam. If I slip that into a sentence while I'm talking to you, you know something's wrong.
That's quite a hard word to slip in,
I know,
like,
but it can't be
organically.
normal, though, can it? I'd be like, oh, it's real pineapple moonbeams down here.
Yeah, that's good. That's good.
Is it? Tell me more. Like I
Down,
just think
yeah,
of
you'd
you.
be
I
like,
think of you like supping a cocktail and being really happy that's in a pineapple.
so
Like
that
just being
sounds.
really happy. There's no way I'm gonna come looking for you, but I know I'm not in the squad anyway. I'm not in the Nikki
You
Goes
are in
Missing
the
squad.
squad. That sounds delicious, though, that cocktail. I think
Yeah,
we'll make it for
does
Philippa while
actually.
she's
I
down
think
here.
we should
Yeah,
have one of
we'll
those.
see how it
That'd be
Sounds
goes.
great.
nice.
Sounds great.
Well, thank you, listeners and viewers, for sticking with us, and we hope you come back again for the second part of Philippa East's interview. And you can find us, of course. You can follow the Red Rabbit on all the social medias. You've got Facebook, TikTok, Patreon. You've got Instagram, and
Instagram.
now YouTube. Thumbs up, people.
And now YouTube. Give us your thumbs up.
Thumbs up. So we will see you next time, or you'll see us next time, whichever one comes first.